Hi, everybody. Before we wanted to start our conversation with you guys and get everything moving, we wanted to read a post that we posted on Instagram a couple of days ago just regarding everything that's going on right now. So I thought it was a good way to start this conversation today. As things continue to unfold in this world, it's difficult to find the right words to express.
Actually, we don't really know what we can say at all other than we stand with you.
Mm-hmm. To the families that have been affected by injustice, brutality, and violence on all ends of the spectrum.
To anyone who has felt the pain of discrimination, racism, and division.
To the local small businesses that have been affected by the looting, the destruction, and the communities that are holding ground in these turbulent times.
And to those holding the ground too, we stand with you.
Yes. We may not be able to stand with you physically today, but in spirit, we fight with you for love, human rights, and for justice, forever and always.
Because enough is enough. We need a new world, a new normal.
And a new home without fear, hate, violence, and destruction.
Well,
yeah.
Welcome to episode 3.
Yes, of our high frequency live stream / podcast that Mark and I have been doing. We thought, in the light of everything that's going on right now in America and in the world, we just thought it was very fitting for us to dedicate our time with everybody today, a little hangout here live, and talk about what's going on right now in the world, and just to start a conversation and share the energy with all of you guys and to hear you out as well, because it's wonderful that you guys can comment and give us your thoughts and opinions and energy through the comment section in this live stream. So it's called for the right time.
Because at this point, I don't know, we thought it was worth just having this discussion. We thought about doing other topics, but nothing...
We were just like, it just feels so not fitting right now with... I feel like everybody's heads, especially in North America, are just on what's going on right now, right?
Well, maybe anyone who's even just paying attention to the media.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. Because, when you look at it, like, where are we at right now? We're over a week into, I don't know, bluntly put, America being in somewhat a state of chaos. But what's really interesting about that is that the whole world is watching. Mm-hmm. And it's giving... There's some positives. It's giving some opportunity through instigating this chaos for everybody to use America as a mirror for themselves, but also as a people or a community or a nation, and to think about what's going on there in relation to yourself, and then how you behave on a day-to-day basis, but then also how you're contributing to what's going on. Mm-hmm. And if you are, because I think why we decided a yoga channel to raise our voice about this, to just talk about it, is...
We can't sit silent and stay silent, because, and just continue to do yoga poses and give yoga videos. Not that we're stopping that. You guys are going to get a class tomorrow and the next day. But we just thought, it's the right thing to do. And I think everybody needs to find a way that they can contribute in a positive way, one way or another. And I think what's really interesting about contribution is that everyone can do something in their own way. It doesn't mean that, you have to go maybe out to the protests, or maybe you have to be crazy on social media. Like, everyone can do something little in their own way that fits best for their life, Yeah,
so, and that's important to understand, because there's a lot of decisiveness and division going on with anyone who's even on the side of, not that it should just be sides, but anyone who's speaking up against racism. And there's people that are like, you have to say it this way, or you have to use this hashtag, or stop posting it this way. We've seen enough of it since we've started speaking. But the thing that's really important is for everyone to understand that everyone can do what they do. And if everyone does what they do, whatever that comes in, whether you're on the streets or whether you're posting on social media, whether you're just talking with your friends and family, or whether you're educating yourself because you realize you just don't know enough about what's happening and the history of it, and that's okay. All of that is okay, because it's all emotion forward, because it's all about how we think. This whole thing is just how a collective body of people made up of individuals think about skin pigmentation. And that's fucking crazy. Excuse my French, but like, that's so crazy that that's still a thing. And so it's very important that we all understand everyone's at a different stage in their growth and in their perspective. And decisiveness and division doesn't help the overarching cause.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we wanted to strongly support, is bringing positivity and patience and support for one another, because everyone's trying to do something, and to go and create any more division than we need right now in the world just seems useless. So yeah, I think that's our big...
That's sort of where we're coming from.
That's where we're coming from with this. And that's actually, like, I just saw a comment asked for what was our inspiration. And I think this was our inspiration to do something like that today with everybody that's in our community and that is joining in on YouTube right now.
And anyone who just wants to participate in this or in any way. And I think that's...
And you know, it's interesting because for us at first, when everything started to unfold, it was really hard for Mark and I myself to find the right words, or just to even understand how do we fit into all of this. As influencers, as people that have a following, we feel like it's the only right thing to do to speak up. But at the same time, we're like, well, you know, it's scary and it's a sensitive topic and it's a very sensitive, everything is very sensitive. And so there was definitely a little bit of like fear and hesitation. How do we approach it the right way?
Well, and also a process of how to process it in our own minds, being that we are white privilege in our history, in our ancestry, and in our position, and in the economic standard that we live comparatively to the like 95% of the rest of the world. It's really difficult to see if it's appropriate because people are so sensitive. And it's like if you say the wrong thing, people jump at you. But we also realize that what's worse than saying the wrong thing sometimes, and we may say the wrong thing in this podcast. I'm like, and I hope that you'll correct us or we'll correct each other, or whatever it might be, because it's better to try than to sit silent or to be fearful and to sit still. And I think that's really important to understand. And it took us a couple of days to realize that, of course, being where we are, our support is necessary because it's a human issue. It's not just a black issue or a minority issue. It's everyone and how we all interact.
It's our whole world, and it's our relationships with one another. And that's something that always we've had trouble with, seeing just violence around us, or, you know, anything that we see around us that is not done from the heart. Because when we step back and we just look at ourselves as human to human outside of everything else, like, we're people, all of us, and maybe we have differences physically, you know, maybe in our politics, culture, whatever it is, but in the end, we're all just human beings experiencing life in human bodies, and we're all searching for a very similar goal, and that is happiness, peace, and freedom, right? And so as human beings, when you see other fellow human beings not being treated or not being given this human right, then it's only right to stand up and fight for what we all believe in, that we all believe people should have. And so this is what's happening right now in America, especially. I'm sure many of you guys that are from America, you're definitely feeling it and seeing it on your doorstep. We ourselves are not experiencing to that point because, I mean, we're on an island right now. There really isn't anything around us that's happening, but we're keeping it in tune on social media, online, and witnessing everything that's going on. And so,
and it's not just an American thing.
Yeah,
it's a long time coming, I think, in America, but it's a long time coming everywhere, that we all challenge ourselves to see what role we play in this whole thing. And I think that's really important to understand. I mean, we're in Canada right now, and we treat our Indigenous people pretty terribly as a government and as a people, historically especially. Not just that we stole the land we're on, but now how through generation after generation we've treated the Indigenous population of our country, visible minorities of all kinds that come to Canada. They're also systematically oppressed to some degree. Statistically, you can't argue it. I've seen enough articles pop up. That's what's really interesting about when these things happen, is all of a sudden information starts coming through. And I clicked on I rarely click on like a CTV, which is like an MSNBC kind of article. But I clicked on it because it was about Canadian systematic racism. And it was talking about like the average wage, the average opportunity. It was talking about like basically the economic side of it. And it was really, really interesting because a lot of Canadians, like Stockwell Day, who's this commentator on CBC, lost his job because he tried to claim that systematic racism didn't exist in Canada, but it exists everywhere to some degree, especially in Western cultures. And it's also not just a one-color issue, it's an entire global issue, and it's a classist issue. Like the class side of this is massive too, and the Western culture versus the rest of the world, that's an issue. So
and that's actually something we've struggled a lot, that we haven't publicly spoken a lot about on our YouTube channel, obviously, because we mainly focus on yoga and things like that. But you know, from traveling so much for the last 3 years, we saw so much of this division. Like you go to Cambodia, for example, we always like to use that country.
Because it's a very, very drastic example.
It breaks your heart to see other human beings in the way that the division and the, what's the right word to explain that?
You could just say the division of inside the global community.
Yeah.
Everyone loves to talk about globalization being such a wonderful thing, and then you go to Cambodia and you see the people that are making our shoes, and they don't even have walls on their houses, and they don't. And
they live in like literally shacks, and children don't even have shoes or clothes, or
and that's a type of global systematic oppression, 100%, because we're paying hundreds of dollars for a pair of shoes that they get paid cents to make, and it ruins not just their personal lives, but their environment around them. But we're getting off topic because this is what we do sometimes when we walk down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
We need to try and keep this positive. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And I think we have to keep this constructive about learning and about communication. And with you guys that are here, we appreciate it very much because this isn't our brand. This is us as humans. Yeah. And we've seen over the last few days a lot of unfollow when we post something.
Well, actually, even today, like when we posted something talking about what we're doing this weekend, because we felt like, okay, we need to do something. We can't just like post something on Instagram and move on with our day. We felt like we needed to contribute a little bit more in any way that we can in our position. And somebody, one person just commented on follow, and they went, all lives matter. And obviously it started like a big conversation with other people, but it's just to show that like there's a lot of education for all of us to have, and for us to start a conversation about Black Lives Matter does not mean that we don't believe in that everybody's lives matter. Of course, but right now the issues are about Black lives because of everything that's happened in America, which has raised the awareness of everything, like we're saying, global racism, and that's what we're trying to stand for. Just bringing that awareness for equality and love and justice for everybody. And so how can we do that? Like, how can we all collectively come together and bring that forward?
That was the big question. What can we do? And I hope everybody asks themselves, what can I do? Because we thought about it. We're like, well, we were planning on doing a podcast, and we actually were lining up to do our very first YouTube live yoga class.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Yeah. And that's been sort of in our plans for a while. We've been getting the hang of it on Patreon, and now we're like, it was time. And then we're like, well, it's not really appropriate to be like, let's just do, So we thought, what can we do? And so we put with a girl that works with us. Her name is Megan. She helped us put together, as a team, a list of resources for organizations that speak to our ethics about what's going on, that we can donate to and that we can encourage people to donate to. And I don't know if I put it in the description of this video yet, but it's at the description of the live stream for the yoga class tomorrow. So we donated to each one of those organizations. And it was really important to us that we started with very, very local. And we worked all the way to very much like bigger, broader, national and global organizations. And I think there's 9 or 10. And I mean, there's local, like, rebuild the communities that have been terrorized by the looting. Because as much as I agree that enough is enough, and we've talked about this extensively over the last few days, the looting it's unnecessary. And any type of violence, although I don't know what it's like to face systematic racism your entire life, and your family's life. Maybe
there's like anger that people are wishing to release in that way.
So I can condemn it only insofar that I can't understand it because I haven't experienced it. And I have a hard time when I see people who haven't experienced it speak to them feeling like they know what that type of rage feels like. But I don't think it's appropriate. I think we talked about that. Yeah. But at the same time, it's hard to condemn it. So we tried to leave out anything that was about anyone that was imprisoned for that kind of violence or looting, and just working for helping people that were peaceful protesting and got arrested, building communities, and working all the way up through to education. And last night there was a girl who Instagrammed you.
Yeah, there was Samantha, I think her name was. She Instagrammed us, and she was trying to start a GoFundMe page for a local business called My Girl's Flowers in California. And this business was terribly looted and destroyed, and it was just so sad to see what people did to a business that seemed like was just a beautiful business that was bringing positivity to the community. And so she was so kind and started a GoFundMe page just to help the owners of this business to try and bring themselves back up after this terrible thing that happened to them. So it's really, really beautiful to see how many people are doing what they can.
And we included the link to the GoFundMe as one of the local charities. And we encourage you guys to check that out. It's also a blog on our website. If you go to our website and go to blog, I think it's called We Stand Together. And then at the end of it, we also included movies that we haven't even seen, all of them, petitions as well that we checked out, and they're very worthy. And lastly, books. And these, disclaimer, we have not read them all, but I believe they come from a perspective that people like ourselves, being privileged, and maybe people who aren't privileged, need to read to understand so we can empathize more. We turned on one of the movies, 13th, last night.
Yeah, and it was powerful. Highly recommended, actually, guys. It's on Netflix.
It's Netflix production called 13th, but the 13th Amendment. And within 10 minutes, I realized what I thought I knew, and I think I'm relatively conscious. I think I've read quite a few books and tried to watch the movies and tried to be engaged, and I've been quite politicized my whole life.
Yeah.
And within literally 10 minutes, I was like, the shit I thought I knew, I don't know, because this runs so deep in the histories of America and Canada as well, and Australia and all kinds of places, this kind of systematic racism, that we all just have to check ourselves and have to, with empathy, seek to learn, to understand, and then seek to share what you understand, but also to absorb what other people understand.
And I think that's the best way to bring in change, is just if we can all start to educate ourselves a little bit more, and then we can speak to it and see it through a different perspective, and that's kind of how change is going to be brought forward. And the one thing that I really hope, seeing everything that's going on right now in America and how people are standing up for something that they truly have had enough of, and it's really cool to see, and it's amazing. My wish is that it's amazing to see how human beings can come together and fight for an issue, and I hope that this brings some kind of change. I really, really hope that there is something that we come out of this will be different for not only, African American communities, but also just racism in general and how we see one another, and brutality and violence, all of that stuff. But what's also what I was saying with all of this is that I hope that we can take this as an example and see it as we have the power as people to come together and fight for things that really matter. So when we look at things like climate change, when we look at things as, animal rights, so you can name it, you could keep going, right? Like, we can actually do something and bring forward change if we all collectively stand up for a cause. And that's really inspiring to see, and really powerful, and just to even see like how social media been responding with everything, and people really pushing that movement forward. So it's been beautiful. But do you want to read some comments?
There was some. I think anytime anyone types Black Lives Matters, it holds it for review.
Really?
Try and test it, guys, if that's the case, because that's really, really crazy. Yeah, that's the fourth one in a row I've had to approve. That's interesting. I mean, don't get me started about censorship on this channel. But I think we have a setting so that somewhat what could be controversial things that people say are blocked for approval. So, I mean, I bet if you said like, F you, mother effers, I'm sure that would ask for it as well. But so, yeah, I saw something earlier I wanted to highlight from Sandra Slater. She thinks, I think rioting and protesting are two totally different things. And I, dead on. I think that's really important to think about. And I think that that's a message that a lot of media that may want to build more sympathy for the economy than for the racism tried to lump it all together. I think there's definitely different people with different behavior, and it needs to be acknowledged that the rioting is ridiculous. it's completely ridiculous.
We don't need to, disrupt our communities and people's lives. We can peacefully come together and speak for a movement without, because the thing that really makes us sad is the people that are feeling the pain of it. A lot of it is small businesses that are there trying to survive, and they're not the commercialist big Walmarts and epicenters, right? So it's kind of breaks our heart to see like someone didn't deserve to have their entire business put on fire, like that's really sad to me. So if there was a way that we could focus on more speaking up for a cause and fighting for a cause in a more peaceful way, which is mainly, I think, is what's happening. It's just obviously that, like Mark said, I think the media likes to highlight a lot of the negativities.
Certain types of media.
Yeah,
everyone's fighting for clicks out there, and they're also fighting to push their political agenda and their perspective and to their community, because now news has communities that like sign up for their kind of perspective in the world. Right. So it's crazy. But I just approved like 9 Black Lives Matters things, so it's definitely holding it.
That's weird for YouTube to do.
Yeah,
that.
I mean that's not the same as like anything that this should be. Actually, so maybe we can write to YouTube and just say, like, maybe during this time period especially, that shouldn't be consideed one of the filtered comments. I think that's really...
YouTube is so weird sometimes, you guys, really with all this.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's, there's a lot of people saying Black Lives Matter. So try hashtagging it too, guys. I think that'd be really cool. Maybe the hashtags will go through. The rioting is not ridiculous. It's a cry for help. Create the imaginable. I think that's really interesting as well to think about, because I think then you have to talk about, that was from, Create the Imaginable. I think if the rioting is a cry for help, I think we don't understand their intention, and that's why I have a hard time judging it. I think rioting against small businesses, I think that's ridiculous. If you want to go to CNN, like they did, and cause some disruption, all day long, that's your choice. That's your choice. Yeah. Like, to me, I think, and maybe
our personal stance is that we don't believe violence is the right way to communicate it, but we also understand other people's positions. So if you feel like that's what you want to do, like we hold our space right here.
And it's interesting because it's that I can't relate to it because I haven't felt it. So I don't, and again, I go back to what I was saying earlier. How can I speak to it if I have never experienced
it's funny, actually.
Need for a cry for help?
What Mark and I were talking about, there's been a lot of conversations these days about everything that's going on. And Mark told me that he actually used to be in a punk rock band called Closet Monster. And he wrote an entire song in like 2001 about being an anti-racist, right? Wow. It was so funny. He's like, I wrote a song like 2001 talking about how how could racism still be happening? It's 2001.
It was a satirical song that we wrote. It was like a minute and a half long, and it was just to be sung along to, and it was to mock the idea that at that point in our lives, it was 2001, and we were young kids in a punk rock band, and we were there was a lot of racism in our community. It was a suburb next to Toronto in Ajax. And there was a racist skinhead movement, and this was insane to us because we were politicized punk rockers, and so we would write songs to help raise the awareness that this is how ridiculous that is. And the point of the song, which is why I was telling Juliana, was that one of the lines was like, "It's now 2001, so this is relevant. How come? The fact that I have to remind you that racism's ridiculous." Oh, I can't remember. It just proves that F racism. Sing that.
There's a lot of F racism in that song.
But it was like joking, like saying it's not 1770. Like, why do we have to write this song? And now it's 2020, and I'm freaking like, we're still in it. Like we're still like, look at what's going on everywhere, and it makes my brain numb to think about. Like back then, I was filled with rage. Like after shows, like these skinheads would show up at our shows, and we'd have to go outside the venue and fight them in the streets to stand up for racism. And that's when I'm like, and I was just a white suburban kid that had a line drawn in the sand, and we would do whatever it took to show that our belief was right.
And you stood up for something, and that's beautiful.
And I took a lot of beatings, and that was my way of dealing with it back then. And now, 20 years later, I'm like, well, it's numbing because I'm like, what do we do? Well, we get on here and we talk with you guys, and hopefully maybe some of us will raise the energy and we'll all come together for a minute and then depart and be a little bit wiser and more learned and have a little bit more wisdom and experience in talking and thinking about these things.
Yeah.
And that's why when it comes down to the rage down there, it's like, what's the difference between someone smashing something and me fighting those Nazis back then? And I battle with those questions. I'm like, that's why I find it really hard to judge it. But yeah, I mean, being in that punk rock band back then and writing songs about racism like the early 2000s. And here we are 20 years later. It's great to see it coming to a head, and I pray to God this doesn't end up just like a forgotten hashtag.
I think that's what we actually, one of the posts that we were saying, like we just really hope that this movement doesn't just become another thing that kind of lasted for a month and then it just kind of fades away and gets forgotten and, like we said, just becomes another hashtag. I hope, you know, based on the amount of money that's being raised and the petitions that are being signed and a lot of people talking to their leaders and their governments, hopefully there will be bigger change that finally comes forward, because it's time, you know, like we always say, enough is enough. Like we need to start creating a new world. And with everything that's happened with coronavirus and the pandemic, and it allowed us to, all of us, to take time to really rethink our places in the world and everything that kind of fell on us. I mean, talk about 2020 and how crazy of a year it's been for everybody. I mean, oh my God, it's insane. But now that I find that, you know, now we've been so much more connected to understanding our own places in the world and how we want to create a new world through different changes. And I think this is just another step in us helping and fighting for a better world, a new world. And education, I think, is a beautiful step towards that, and educating ourselves, which will then, you know, educating our own children, and then starting to build a new generation where this isn't even part of our reality anymore, that there is an understanding of a collective oneness and acceptance of everybody, no matter if you're Black or Asian or from this country, from that country, you know, like it's this understanding and acceptance of each other as human beings from planet Earth, not from X and Y and this and that.
That's
so
beautiful.
I think that is my wish and my prayer for everything that's happening right now. Yeah, it's tough, guys. And I know everybody's feeling the energies. Well, I feel it myself. You know, it's very heavy. Like there's just like this heaviness in the air. And what's important to bat it is doing just some more grounding and some self-work when you do feel like that energy is too much for you and you need a little bit of a setback. Because what's important as well is, if you know, as we come forward and you fight for an issue, and for those of you guys that maybe even out in the streets and really supporting the cause, it's important to be mindful of your own energy resource. And once you start to feel depleted, your work and your energy that you wish to put to a cause will be that much less if you're empty inside. And so in one way to refill our own energy is to do a little bit of self-care. So being mindful of how much time you spend on like social media and involved in it, because it is also draining to an extent. So finding a nice balance. So, you know, helping yourself with yoga or meditation or just breathing or just taking a time out and turning off your devices and just kind of reconnecting with yourself. I think it's really important. We did a practice today before this live stream on our Patreon. And that was a big focus of our yoga class today, was just like coming back to your heart and to yourself. And that is also going to be the focus of our practice tomorrow that we're doing at 10 a.m. here on YouTube. So for any of you guys that want to join, it's going to be all about just giving ourselves that half an hour to come back to our hearts and refill our own energy reserve with positivity and peace. So then once we are finished with that practice, we have that much more beautiful, radiant energy to bring forward into the world. And if we collectively come together and always focus on bringing our energy up, I mean, that's love, that's the positive energy that's going to create beautiful, peaceful change in this world.
I love that. No, I think that's so fitting. It's
important because you know, we can talk about so many really heavy issues for so long until you're like, I need a breath of air, you know, like you feel so depleted. And I've been feeling a little bit of that lately, honestly, like I have.
It's been a crazy year.
Well, and it's been a crazy year. It went from Corona to this. I mean, Corona is still existing, by the way. Like, that's the weird part. This all, like, it's like I find like media completely forgot, like we're still in the middle of pandemic here, but.
It's very frightening, actually, to think about all these people gathering and what might be happening as far as like.
So if you are going out there, please be careful and wear your masks and keep your distance, because it's just got to still be mindful of other health issues that can come from a lot of this.
No,
Do you want to read some comments? Sorry, I just kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent because I wanted to express that to anyone that needs it right now.
I think like a compassion drainage is a huge issue. I mean, we've dealt with it a lot before, like when we get really engaged in animal rights. When we first went vegan, we got we took to the streets a lot for a lot of animal protesting and animal awareness back in Toronto.
Yeah.
And we worked with Anita at the Pig Save movement, and we did that for at least twice a week.
For the whole summer.
For the whole summer. Yeah. And by the end of it, like sometimes we'd just come home and we would be crushed. Because...
Well, I mean, it was difficult. We were giving water to animals that were being driven to a slaughterhouse. And so you're giving love and compassion to an animal for the very last time. So that was
their only first time,
and their only first time. And so it was like, ooh, it was really
crazy.
hard.
We'd come back and we'd be drained. And so there's something about when you care, it takes a toll, and when you think about things, there's always emotional drainage. And I think that it's really important, like Juliana's saying, to be mindful of balancing it and find the ways that you can contribute, but also to bring yourself back home internally. Because it's the most important thing, is that if you're no good for your actions because you're so depleted, then you can't contribute anymore. And so I think that's so important. Because everything is really overwhelming. And as we see, I don't blame anyone who unfollows us for doing streams like this and posting about Black Lives Matters and stuff, because they're on their own path and they're not ready to face it yet. And it's too much for them. And for the most part, or maybe whatever it is, I feel as if we can all come to an understanding that racism is freaking ridiculous, but everyone's on their own path to get there. And unfortunately, some people are way off the mark at this point, and so it's up to all of us to raise that general consciousness about it.
And awareness.
And awareness. So when we all have kids and when we're all raising them and the next generation comes and this, so we can slowly do our job to contribute to the curve of getting rid of it finally once and for all. And I saw somebody earlier say, I think that it's going to be around forever. I don't. I truly don't. It may be around for the rest of my lifetime, but if I do everything I can, and we all do everything we can, it will disappear. It has to. It might live in tiny pockets and closed dark corners places all over the world, but as a general society and as a culture, we can do this. Everyone can do this. Yeah. It's possible. Change is always possible, whether it's for yourself and your life and the way you live, or whether it's for a social community or a group of people. There's always hope, no matter what.
We have to live for that hope. We can't just give up and say, oh, well, change will never happen. It's like, no. You have to believe it in your heart that you're going to always fight for that. And if we all fight for change, then there's no way it won't happen and come into reality. So
that's amazing.
Let's do some comments.
Are you okay? So Eric Stern, just the most recent one. Eric Stern says, "Are you guys limiting the amount of news you watch? It's so disturbing. We can't watch but a very few minutes." And we are, very much so, Eric. That's really, really important, because the news is such a bombardment of all kinds of negative energy.
To be honest, I have a hard time trusting a lot of the news these days, because every news channel is always swayed by some sort of political view. And, it's like we sometimes go to very independent creators that do their own research and bring the news as they can find, rather than trusting the mainstream media, because I don't know, I don't feel like I've slowly over time, as more and more things have been unfolding, I've completely lost my trust in the mainstream news media.
Oh, completely. And there's a difference between what's happening, which you can get from any news channel, but as soon as it sways into that gray area of opinion about what's happening, that's when we have to all be very mindful and think about, well, where did they get their opinion and why do they have that? And is it in line with the mandate of their institution that they work for? Most of the time it is. And so it's tough. We watch limited news, Eric. We definitely do, because it's too much if you just sit there and digest it all. And
again, talking about that energy being drained, it drains you because you can get hooked on some article, and again, you don't know where the source is or who you should trust, and then you get down this rabbit hole and it just drains your energy. So we are definitely limiting that, but we still try to keep updated, because I think right now, with so much unfolding on a daily basis, we want to be aware. So we pick and choose the right sources, but we definitely limit it.
And single doses, maybe once or twice a day.
And social media, honestly, these days have been a great source of just awareness.
But as well, it's the same. Like, I don't even go on it anymore because it's just like now there's so much happening. It's like, well, I'm trying to limit my news, and then I go on social media, and it's the same kind of energy coming out, except there's a lot more positive on social. So I think, I don't know, maybe I should spend more time on social and less time kind of picking and choosing the different types of media I ingest from the news on YouTube and I would say TV, but we don't have a TV. So that was a really good question, I thought. So, wow, we have a lot of stuff coming on. Allison Merrick says, racism and speciesism equals trash.
Yes.
Speciesism, someone was encouraging us to talk about that as well. And that's understanding that even beyond the next step, beyond race is species. And then if we're going to treat ourselves equal and with compassion and care and empathy, then the next logical step to take that forward is to start considering our relationships to other species.
And it's the understanding that we as human beings all strive to find happiness, peace, and freedom. Well, so do our animal friends as well. Every single animal out there, it wants freedom and happiness and live in peace and not live in fear. And so once we become aware and start to see it from that greater perspective, we can begin to make even greater changes and create an even more peaceful, loving world for our children and ourselves, where we don't hurt others or exploit other people or animals because we believe we're above them in any sort of way.
Create the Imaginable says, what lifted me up was the SpaceX mission.
Yeah.
Which is great because there is always good stuff to look at.
They were live streaming that too, which was amazing. Just to see that, it was so cool. Outer space. I've always wished to go to outer space. I don't know about you guys, but I've always dreamed. I'm like, imagine how cool that would be to be floating and just looking down on Earth and being like, wow. It'd probably really bring a lot of perspective to how tiny we really are in the whole vast universe, because we feel like the world is all around us and we're the center of the universe, but really we're just like these tiny little grains of sand in this beautiful universe and just experiencing human life for a little short bit of time. For a blink. Think about 100 years. For 100 years in human life, that's like nothing according to space.
Well, it's all perspective,
yeah.
Right?
How long does it take to get to Mars? Did they say it was like...
I don't know. A long time.
Like years.
I think it's years.
Years and, well, obviously
I heard
years.
About Elon Musk wanting to go back to Mars. Well, he wants to get to Mars first, and then he wants to go on a trip and then come back to Earth. And then when he's getting old, he wants to go to Mars to die on Mars.
Weird.
And he'd leave his family and kids behind. And it reminded me of when they were doing that, like, sign up and put out applications to go to Mars. I spent, like, at least a month trying to convince Juliana that we should sign up to go to Mars. And she just kept saying, but what about our families? And I was
That's
like,
a scary thing to think about.
It is, but I'd love to go to Mars, even if it was a one-way trip. Some people are asking about links and things like that. I just actually, if you refresh, I posted a link to the blog where we put tons of links to the different causes that we're hoping people can consider donating to during the stream. And we actually,
there's a little paragraph about each organization and what they focus on and what they do. So it'll kind of give you an idea to kind of pick and choose whichever ones you feel relate to your heart the most. We went and donated to all of them just because we couldn't really choose and we wanted to contribute as much as we could ourselves. But you guys, just enjoy it, read through it if there's anything that connects to you.
And it's important. I think it's really, really important, whether you're black or you're white or whatever standpoint you come from, that you take as much education and time to educate yourself right now, because no matter where we are, there's always more perspective you can gain. And it's really, really important to listen and to learn, I think. I think that, and that's why, I don't know, we just felt it was really important to put that kind of stuff out.
100%.
I don't know. Vibes from Allison Merrick. Super chat. She sent us vibes right back to you. That's really cool. Thank you. I know some of you guys are saying, read my chat, but it's already down the line, so I don't know how to get back. So I apologize for that. Okay, well, this has been really nice. I don't know. Is there more to talk about What do you guys think? You want to ask some questions, do some comments? Edie, you really want to be heard, but I don't know where your original post is. So try posting your original question again, and maybe we can get to it. Listening and learning, says Samantha Gonzalez. Exactly. Tawny, I love you all. So much love to everyone. So much love to everyone. You're right, Tawny. Create the Imaginable has been sending wonderful posts and little icons this whole time. Oh, EDU. EDU, this is what you wanted to say, hey? You humans have very little ideas. Well, what are you? If we're the humans.
Well, you have grand ideas. Maybe they're
us.
An alien or something.
I know. That's why I asked. Maybe it's from Mars, right? Oh my goodness.
Maybe the aliens will come and save us all from all this. Right?
Alan Hammond, hi from Stuttgart, Germany. I've been to Stuttgart. I played a show there when I was younger. That's really cool. Linda McGetchie. Don't you wish everyone could just get along in the world, as you were saying? Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we strive for, right? Is compassion and kindness and peace with everybody. And that's what we're fighting for, you guys. And that's what we all have to stand for and continue to fight for in every way. And not just right now because there's a movement, but in our everyday lives. And not turning a blind eye to racism or any injustice that we see in our own communities, in our own lives. And being brave enough to speak up and to stand up. It's really scary, especially to be on your own and to stand up to something and feel, you don't know how others would support you or not, or I don't know. It's definitely an intimidating thing to do, to stand up to injustice. But we all must do it one way or another. It's the only way that we can bring forward change. And this is what the world needs right now, is we need change in so many different ways.
Let's start here. Let's start with this. This is its time. And it's really important because change comes from people standing up and people speaking out. And stasis always wins when you choose not to. Things will always just stay the same in motionless consistency. And that's why whether it's the civil rights movement or the anti-war movement or with the climate change movement or all these things, they're all so important because it contributes to the evolution of our society. And it manages to raise the questions and face the adversity that comes at it, which it always challenges it and questions the validity of it. But that's the point, is it's about discussion and it's about conversation, and it's about sharing ideas and showing with the courage it takes. And that's why I have so much admiration for everyone that's out there on the streets in America, in Canada, all over the world, because to go out there and do something, it takes so much courage. And so my undying respect goes out to everyone who's out there peacefully protesting and doing what they can to keep this moving, to not just become that hashtag that we all think about 6 months from now, but wasn't that a crazy time? Because change is possible if we all keep at it.
And it's time to create a new normal. There was an interesting idea that really connected with me when, the pandemic really hit, and it was talking about how, everybody was so fighting for it to go back to their normal life. They wanted normality to come back, when they were like, well, why would we want normality, which was all about greed and hatred and injustice, to come back? Like, why don't we actually fight for a new normal? And maybe this is one of our steps here together to fight for a new normal, which includes equality and justice and compassion and inclusion of everybody for who they are.
It's interesting because there's a difference, I think, between a new normal, like desiring normality for society to go back into the economic standpoint it was before, and as an individual. So again, like I think people that wanted that normal back, a lot of them just wanted their old life back because they were suffering and they were in pain and they were dealing with terrible things during coronavirus. But I don't think that the whole world necessarily would say like that going back to the way we were chewing our planet alive and like marginalizing mass amounts of people in the richest nations in the world. I don't think that necessarily, that's the normal that needs to change. And the new normal needs to be that more people are taken care of and can go back to how they were before Corona. And even further to how we all should be living with freedom and peace and equal opportunity. And that's the number one thing out of all this. This is about opportunity. This is about, we all deserve to be on a level playing field. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah. So anyways, I think there's some wonderful comments coming through again. Thank you guys for your energy and for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah. So, thanks, guys. Ikanya Revolution with the many colored fists. That's
and
beautiful.
she put the brackets in the R, evolution. I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really cool.
That's amazing, actually.
Yeah.
On that note, I think
we're probably is a good place to end here.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us and for doing this live stream podcast with us and just for sharing your energy, your information, your insight on everything that's going on. I think it's important for all of us just to take some time today to really think about so much of this.
And there's been a lot of comments we just didn't engage with about yoga and us personally and travel. This isn't the space for it, we thought, so we decided
Not today,
ahead of
but,
time we wouldn't answer stuff like that, but we will come back on next week and do another podcast, and maybe it'll be a little more personal, but if maybe not, we'll see.
We're kind of trying to just go with the flow and what feels most right now. But tomorrow...
Saskia Rodriguez, Donald Trump needs yoga. I wanted to read one more, though.
Okay.
Where did it go? It was really, really nice. Oh, I lost it. Reeve says, there's a poem by Carlos Santana that fits so much to this idea. One day, there will be no borders, no boundaries, no flags, no countries. And the only passport will be the heart.
That's so beautiful.
That's so beautiful.
I love that. Yes. Yes to all of that.
Yes to all of that.
That would be...
Thank you for sharing that, Reeve.
That's beautiful.
And thank you guys all for being here with us.
And tomorrow, if you're around at 10 a.m. PST, so Pacific time, I'm not sure what it is for everyone out there, but come join us for a 30-minute yoga flow. It's going to be live streamed just from our place right there behind me, a little studio live stream room. And we're going to flow, we're going to do some yoga, we're going to reconnect and just raise some awareness and good vibration into the world. So if you're around, please join me. It would be really wonderful to do yoga together at the same time. It's always a really cool opportunity and experience to do that. So, all right, guys, sending you all so much love, and take care of yourselves. Stay healthy, stay strong, stay positive, and just love one another and
listen and learn.
Yeah,
that's what we can all do right now.
Listen
and act.
Yeah,
listen, learn, and act.
All right, guys. Have a beautiful rest of your Saturday, your weekend, and yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.